Now, more on those figures showing a substantial drop in the number of people applying to British universities, especially ones in England. So have prospective students been put off by the decision to treble tuition fees? With me now is 17-year-old student Ramel Affleck, and joining us from Oxford, Professor Janet Beer, Vice-Chancellor of Oxford Brookes University and Chair of the University Alliance of Business-Focused Institutions. Ramel, first, how has having to pay up to £9,000 changed your own look at this?
It's changed it a lot because it's suddenly a question of whether it's worth it. You suddenly start to look at the other options like apprenticeships. So it's definitely had an effect on my view of whether university is worth the trouble, especially when you hear stories about people going through university and still not actually getting jobs.
Even though you don't have to pay up front?
Even though you don't have to pay up front. And I think for other young people, there is a lack of knowledge around that whole system, and I feel that has probably affected the young people as well.
Do you know people yourself who have chosen not to apply to university because of this?
I know a few people who have chosen not to go to university as a result, because they feel it would be better to do an apprenticeship, which is a bit more which obviously they're getting work experience as a result of that.
Professor Beer, your institution has bucked the trend. How?
Well, that's an interesting question. I think it may be the fact that we have a very good reputation for the quality of our student experience, and indeed we're taking the opportunity now with the new fee regime to emphasise to our students and to prospective students that the quality of the student experience is absolutely paramount in our concerns. It's also the fact, I think, that many of our disciplines face the professions, and we have a very good record in terms of our students going into employment once they graduate.
So do you believe people are being put off?
Sorry?
Do you believe people are being put off, broadly? I mean, do you think this decline is because of fees?
No drop in applications is good news, but if I can just stick with the example of my institution, we had a 20% increase in applications last year, and we're mildly up on that again. So we had a bumper year. Any waverers we're going to try and get in last year before the fee increase. I hope that the message is getting through to young people that they do not need to pay up front, that the finance package is designed with them in mind in terms of payback after they start to earn £21,000. And one of the things that I would say to anyone wavering is that 80% of new jobs created require graduate level skills, and that's a very compelling argument for entering higher education.
Well, let's see how compelling it is with Ramel here in the studio.
I think it's very compelling, but it doesn't stop the fact that there are a lot of young people that aren't aware of the system, and so that is a lot of money for anybody, let alone somebody who's, barely an adult. They've barely, they maybe only just be making their mind up about their choices, and I think it's a very hard decision to make if you aren't aware of the system.
Professor, how do you explain one really interesting thing about these numbers is that the decline amongst more affluent students seems to be greater than the decline amongst less affluent students, which is exactly the opposite of what was being warned. How do you explain that?
Well, it could be that the gap year has returned, because we think that not many students went for a gap year last year. But, I mean, there is one other point that I would want to make, and that is that there are still more applicants than there are places. And actually, in terms of economic recovery, we need to be investing in universities, we need to be investing in our young people. And so it's still a very competitive sector.
But do you feel, therefore, we should be growing the number of university places we have in Britain?
Yes.
That there should still be an aspiration for more and more people to go to university?
Absolutely. As I said before, 80% of all new jobs are at graduate level. And all the evidence that comes out of the OECD is that graduates have a much better quality of life. They're better parents, they're better citizens, they participate in democracy, they're healthier, all those things we know. There is also, and it's a fact across OECD nations, that at any one time 80% of graduates are in jobs. and the 20% who aren't are doing other things. They're caring, or they're working flexibly, they're going in and out of the workforce, but in a very positive way.
Ramal, are you finding this persuasive? Is it changing your mind at all?
Changes my mind slightly, but I don't think it will change a lot of young people's choices to go and do something different. I just feel there is a lack of knowledge around the whole system.
But I mean, hearing those numbers, do you not feel convinced that you will stand a better chance of getting a better job if you have a university degree? Do you still feel sceptical about that fact?
I think I am sceptical simply because it's also a lot about work experience, and there are a lot of other different options other than universities available. And I think more than ever, really, apprenticeships are now a fairly mainstream thing. There are quite a lot of them around now, and I think that is probably something that people are considering, especially, I feel, with a lack of knowledge of the system, as she was saying, that they don't have to pay it up front. And I feel that's definitely a big factor.
Well, Ramal Athlet, Professor Janet Beer, thank you both very much. John.